Hello viewers, I am Professor P.K. Kathal from Department of Applied Geology, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, Sagar, India.
The topic of my today's lecture is impact of environmental factors on ecology. Contents include ecology, autoecology, and synecology, their definitions, niche, principles behind paleoecological interpretations, environmental factors affecting ecology, that will include physical environmental factors, chemical environmental factors, and biological environmental factors. First, the definition of ecology, autoecology, and synecology. Ecology concerns interaction among organisms and their environment, which includes biotic and abiotic, that is, physical and chemical parameters. Autoecology is the ecology of an individual species, while synecology is ecology of a group of species in an environment. Paleoecology, however, is a study of interactions between organisms and environments in geological times. It interacts with, depends upon, and touches fields like paleontology, ecology, climatology, biology, and taxonomy. So we can say that micropaleontology or paleontology alone cannot help us in understanding paleoecology or its interpretation. We will require study of climatology, sedimentology, and taxonomy. Another important thing that I want to mention here is that for autoecology, every species has certain ranges for different parameters. These ranges are called survival range, growth range, and reproduction range. This particular diagram displays the autoecology of a particular species for its different ranges of temperature. This diagram shows that for survival, the species must have a range of temperature from 20 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius, but for growth, it should have a range from 25 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius, and for reproduction, it must have a range uh, between 20 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius. It shows that if any species is grown uh, in between 25 to 20 degree, then it will survive or it may grow, but it will not reproduce. Principles behind paleoecological interpretations. For fossils of extinct organisms, interpretations are derived through ecological aspects of other living species, fossil counterparts of which occur in association with the species in question, with major assumptions like all organisms are adapted and restricted to a particular environment and a particular lifestyle. They depend on another organism in direct or indirect manner, and uniformitarianism is used as a methodology. Paleoecologists make inferences about ancient organisms and environments based on analogies that they find in the present. This particular diagram shows the oceanic environment. Uh, I'll make use of a pointer here. You see, this is the zero level, this is the level, and before that we have back shore, and between this back shore and upper shore we have foreshore. And the upper shore, the depth, maximum depth is up to 7 meter. From level 7 meter downwards, we have lower shore that goes up to 20 meter, and between after 20 meter we have a proximal shore that varies in depth from 20 meter to around 50 meter, followed by intermediate offshore which varies from depth 60 meter to depth 100 meter, and then we have distal offshore where the depth is between 100 meter to 200 meter. Uh, if we look at the water body, we find that the upper zone enjoys maximum light, is called upper photic zone, which has one lower photic zone where the light is diminished, and thereafter we have aphotic zone where there is no penetration of light. Habitat. Foraminifera are highly abundant. We can get 1,000 to 250,000 living tests per square meter in modern seas. They are adapted to wide spectrum of marine, marginal marine environment. They occur at varying depths, means intertidal zone to deep oceanic level. They also occur in varying salinity from brackish to hypersaline condition, varying latitudes from equator to poles, varying environments that includes marine, marginal marine, that is paralic water environment, and very rarely freshwater environment. Viewers, study of ecology of foraminifera depends upon the distinction between the living and dead cell at the point of time of collection of sediments. The distinction of living, that is those tests which are bearing protoplasm at the time of collection, may be distinguished from empty test using one stain called Rose of Bengal. This has revolutionized the study of ecology of benthic foraminifera. In the picture, you can see that the test of living species of foraminifera, nonian, has taken pink color, while that test has not taken. Similarly, in Ilphidium, the living test has taken, the protoplasm has taken pink color because of the Rose of Bengal strain, but the dead cell has not. So in this way, we can count the number of living and dead cells at the point of time of collection of sediment samples. Benthic foraminifera live on firm substrate, which varies from rocks, shells, and plants, or also on sediments at three levels. These three levels are called different by different habitat name, which is called epifaunal, infaunal, and deep infaunal. Epifaunal includes sessile or free benthos crawling or swimming on sediments. Infaunal includes sessile or free benthos living within the top 0.5 millimeter of sediments, and the sessile or free benthos living on the sediment below 0.5 mm are called deep benthos. This is depicted here. You see all these forms D1, B1, B2, A3 are epifaunal. B1 and A2 are associated with plant. Similarly, we find that there are one form A1 which can be called as semi-epifaunal because it is buried little, and any other form which occurs in this particular zone will be called infaunal, and all those which are found below it are called deep infaunal. So this is how the habitat of benthic foraminifera can be understood. We have taken certain selected example that show mode of life in benthic species. I told you that benthic species may be sessile, clinging, or free. They may occur as epifaunal species, semi-epifaunal species, or infaunal species. These are certain examples of the name of foraminifera which belong to a particular habitat. Now, the relationship between mode of life and test architecture can be understood. In fact, non-septate species, for example, hemispherical or meandering forms represented by Tolipamina, or penispiral form like Amodiscus, Cornuspira, Spirillina, branch forms like Dendrophyra, or low trochospiral with broad umbilical area forms like Cibicidis, Rosalina, Discarbis are sessile epifaunal. While low trochospiral biconvex forms like Amphistagina and a large form of family Sauritidae are clinging epifaunal. Planktonic foraminifera live on photic zone. As I told you, photic zone extends between 0 to 200 meter. We have two types of planktonic foraminifera. One is spinos foraminifera, which have high buoyancy by virtue of their globular test. They live in the upper 100 meter of photic zone, and keeled forms, once living planktonic foraminifera, they lived in the lower 100 meter photic zone. And this addition of this picture shows the upper layer is having spinosplanchnic form like Globus arenoides, and the lower layer is having Globorotalia. And here this black region is showing the abundance of planktonic foraminifera. We find that after a particular photic zone or semi-photic zone, there is an adverse effect on planktonic foraminifera, and they decline abruptly, and below 3000, that is CCD, their cells are dissolved and they do not exist. Niche. Ranges of ecological parameter for survival, growth and reproduction can be depicted in graphical pattern also. It is a match of species to a specific environment and describes how an organism or population responds to distribution of resources and competitors. For example, by growing when resources are abundant. Type and number of variable include dimensions of an environmental niche that vary from one to another. Scientists often think of niche in a special or habitat sense and commonly from data collected at single point of time, which is not correct. In this picture, one particular species range of different parameters has been shown in the circle. You see, this line is representing temperature from this point to this point, starting from 0 degrees Celsius. This is 10 degrees Celsius, and this is 33 degrees Celsius, normal temperature of water. And this is the range of salinity starting from 10 and going up to 45, and after 45 we will have hypersaline condition. Then we have one range of pH depicted along this line. pH is 3, means it is very highly acidic, and here it is 10, it is very basic alkaline. And there is a, so if we have a species living under this condition, we can find that the range of this species for temperature is, say, varying from around 15 degrees Celsius and going up to 33 degree, and salinity starting from, say, around 12 to around 35 or 37, and pH varying from, say, around 7 to around 8. So this area can be selected as a niche for this living species, as an example of autoecology of this particular species. So this bat-like picture is the niche for this particular species. Environmental factors controlling ecology. You see, the environmental factors in the oceans may be categorized in abiotic factors, which will include physical and chemical factors, and biotic factors that will include association with other organisms. First of all, we will take the physical environmental factors that control ecology of foraminifera, and let me specify here that any factor alone cannot operate independently, or it cannot change the ecology, or it cannot affect the ecological behavior of any organism. But to simplify our understanding of the impact of a particular environmental factor, it is assumed that the other factors are at their constant. The foremost in the uh, physical environmental factor is temperature of water. It controls ecology latitudinally as well as bathymetrically. Latitudinally, when we say, means horizontal distribution of temperature, and bathymetrically, when we say, is the vertical distribution of temperature. You see, geographers have divided the um, Earth's surface into different latitudinal zones on the basis of climate. In this particular picture, this is tropical zone extending from 23° north to 23° south, and the temperature range is between 25 to 36. Then we have a temperate region, but generally it varies between 15 to 33 in different areas. And the polar region starting from 66 degree north is having a temperature range from -2 to +5 degrees Celsius. Temperature affects both distribution and morphology of foraminifera, and we can find benthic, agglutinated, and calcareous dwarf forms similar to polar regions represent this zone. Means when we are going down with depth, we will get agglutinated forms or dwarf calcareous forms similar to those which we get in the polar region. The impact of temperature may be summarized. It controls vital activities of all species. Each species has tolerance limits and temperature optimum. Species can tolerate temperature extreme only for a short period. It is a primary factor controlling both geographical as well as vertical distribution, and it influences test size and morphology. And in the diagram below, we can see the impact of temperature on spinoplanktic species. You see, this is very interesting example. This is the North Pole here. This is the North Pole, and here we have our South Pole. And as I have told you that in the polar region, the temperature will vary from 0 to 5 degree here, and here also from 0 to 5. We find that from 0 to 5, in this particular temperature zone, some planktonic species like Globizarina pachyderma and Globorotalia truncatulinoides, they showed sinistral coiling. Sinister coiling, when we say, is anti-clockwise like this. But after 5, we find that the same species is showing clockwise coiling, means dextral coiling. Similarly, here at the North Pole, this is 5 degree temperature. Here also the same phenomena is repeated. This is very interesting and this is very important because it can be used in mapping the paleo thermal lines, particularly in the Pleistocene area. We will discuss this in the application of foraminifera in other lecture. Second important parameter is depth of water. Depth of water influences, depth of water plays direct as well as indirect role. Directly it increases the pressure, solubility of carbon dioxide and ratio of carbon dioxide with respect to oxygen, because photosynthesis reduces but respiration continues, leading to decrease in pH from 8.2 to 7. Level at which calcium carbonate solution equals its supply is called calcium carbonate compensation depth, or CCCD, that gradually moves up from 4,500 meter near the equator to as low as 450 meter near the poles. The other parameters which decrease with depth are temperature, light, intensity, and oxygen. Impact of depth on ecology can be summarized that benthic assemblages of littoral, neritic, bathyal, and abyssal environment vary considerably. Impact of depth on ecology may be understood as benthic assemblages of littoral, neritic, bathyal, and abyssal environment are very different from each other and they can be recognized. Impact is more on calcareous benthic forms which become more rounded, more ornamented, but they reduce in size with depth because of the low chances of secretion of calcium carbonate. And species living below CCD show effect of dissolution, particularly the dead planktonic foraminifera. Dominance of agglutinated species increases below CCD. Here, this is a very interesting diagram. You see here, this is equator, 0 degree, and we have a zone between north 20 and south 20. It is dominated by Miliolidi and Numulididi up to a depth, say around 250 or 300 meter. But here we find that between north 20 to south 20, we have a zone dominated by Amphistagina, a large calcareous form, up to a depth of around 1500 meter, but beyond 20 north up to 40 north and between 20 to 40 south, this the depth zonation of amphitryon is restricted to only 500 meter. Why? Because when we move towards the pole, the CCD depth is not very much. Similarly, we have a zone represented by Cassicolina, Bolivina. They occur up to around 3000 meter between north 20 and around south 60, up to a depth of say around 3000 meter. Similarly, we have a zone represented by Alabamina and Uizarina deep water forms between around 30 north, this is around 25 north to say around 50 north. It occurs up to a depth of 4500 meter, but after 25 north, this depth is reduced to around 3500 meter in the northern hemisphere and also the same in the southern hemisphere. The deepest fauna, as we see here, represented by Rhabdomina, Bathysiphon, Cyclamina, and Haplophragmites, they are all agglutinated foraminifera. They may occur up to a depth of 5500 meter. So here we can find that the depth assemblages can be recognized, and depth plays an important role in in helping development of different assemblages of foraminifera. Impact of depth on planktonic foraminifera is again very interesting. Planktic versus benthic ratio increases as more and more planktonic forms settle at bottom after depth. So after a particular depth, we find that planktic foraminifera are increasing. In fact, planktic foraminifera, they live a little away from the shoreline, where water is having sufficient light. And similarly, the ratio between agglutinated and calcareous benthic foraminifera, it also increases in favor of agglutinated species as we go down with depth, because secretion of calcium carbonate decreases due to increase of pore pressure. In the diagram below, you find that this is the zero level, which is extended for in this diagram to this line, and we find this whole white part is represented by percentage of calcareous benthic forms, and we find that they are dominating, and they are dominating up to say around 200 meter, beyond which we find that there is a drastic decline in the planktic foraminifera, but there is after say around 200 meter, there is sharp increase in planktonic foraminifera. So this is how we can work out the ratio between calcareous planktic foraminifera versus calcareous benthic foraminifera. But you see that planktic foraminifera are dominating, but after 3000 meter, there is a drastic decline in their number because of the CCD, as we have discussed in previous slide, and we find that the agglutinated foraminifera, they are increasing in the ratio, although their number is not much, but in comparison to calcareous benthic and calcareous planktic foraminifera, their percentage in the assemblage will be higher. Here in this black region, this black region is showing relative abundance of benthic foraminifera that will include calcareous as well as agglutinated. This is also showing that it is extending up to 3000 meter. After that, there is very few number of benthic foraminifera available. The column of water is represented by particularly in the photic zone by spinose planktonic foraminifera and keel planktonic foraminifera. Here in the enlarged view, you can appreciate the spinose planktonic foraminifera, how different they look from the keel planktonic foraminifera. These are the keel planktonic foraminifera, and this is the spinose planktonic foraminifera. Light. Penetration of light is checked by turbidity and turbulence. Turbidity is the uh, particle percentage of particulate matter in the water, and turbulence is the high energy condition, and it is all both turbidity and turbulence are more in the upper zone. And planktic species which are normally living up to 200 meter away from the coast are affected if light is checked, affecting phytoplanktons and algae that provide oxygen and nutrition. Currents are the flow of water from one place to another under the influence of wind or a difference in temperature. Due to minute size, the test may be sorted, lugged out and carried away by currents like mineral grains, because foraminifera in that condition they behave like grains. Pore sediments support denser population compared to the silt and clay. Turbulence can also play an important role. The wave action in the littoral zone, beaches, and also in the upper 100 meter zone keeps turbidity continued for a longer time. That will not be good for planktonic foraminifera. Turbulence increases turbidity, which retards the growth of phytoplankton on which planktonic foraminifera thrive, so they will also show decline. It also retards population and diversity as test ports are choked. Turbidity, it affects the penetration of light, and it is because of the particulate matter in the suspended form. It also checks process of photosynthesis in microalgae, which is otherwise allowed up to 120 meters depth in clear tropical water, 40 meter in shelf water, and 15 meter or so in coastal water of temperate latitude. Ecology of calcareous population is severely affected due to turbidity. It can also show impact in the form of assemblies dominated by larger and stronger species like Amphistagina. Substrate and bottom. This is the rock and sediment nature and texture of sediments at the bottom. Substrate or bottom, it plays a very important role in their distribution and morphology. Proportional relationship was noted between their number and median diameter of sediment in a very old study, but this is very important. Coarser sediment supports more benthic forms, but silt and clay do not. Maximum population occurs on sand and fine sands mixed with good quantity of mud, and spinose benthic forms like Asterotelia trispinosa dominates clayey and muddy substrate, as we find in case of east coast of India. The topic of my this lecture is chemical environmental factors affecting ecology of foraminifera. The foremost in the chemical environmental factors is salinity. Salinity is saltiness, that is amount of salt including NaCl, MgSO4, KNO3, Na2CO3 in dissolved water. Its unit is mass fraction mg per liter. That is mass of dissolved material in a unit mass of solution. For example, 0.5 per thousand or 0.05 per 100. It is measured in mass of salt per unit volume uh, in the formula in the equation given below. Gram of salt, kilogram of seawater. Chlorinity is concentration of dissolved chloride ions, and isohaline and isohale are the contours of constant salinity. The table below gives the breakup of different types of water. In fresh water, it is 0.05 per 100 or 0.5 per 1000. In brackish water, it is ranging from 0.05 to 3 per 100, but from 0.5 to 30 per 1000, and marine water from 3 to 5 per 100 and 30 to 40 per 1000. Salinity plays a very important role in ecology of marine organisms, particularly foraminifera. Because foraminifera are unicellular, they show very high susceptibility to minute change in salinity. And salinity tolerance limit are important for their survival, growth, and reproduction. Majority of them occurs in normal saline water, few in brackish, and very few in fresh water. In fact, those living in fresh water, they do not get preserved in rocks, so therefore their concentration is not much, and they are not of much importance. Uh, these limits of salinity in benthics are wider and distinct compared to the planktic forms. Many species can tolerate wide limits of salinity. Example species of marshes are found in both brackish and hypersaline water. Uh, but with lower salinity, number of euryhaline found is reduced. Euryhaline form which cannot tolerate much fluctuation in salinity in comparison to stenohaline form, which will tolerate a wider range of salinity. Uh, if we compare the impact of salinity on planktic and benthic, we find that in the planktic species, the conditions are more uniform as they usually occur in salinity range of 34 to 36 per thousand, but can tolerate it up to 40 per thousand. And this is the reason why planktic species are so widely distributed and they are adapted to various changing salinity conditions. In case of benthic species, normal salinity range is from 30 to 40 per thousand, which seems to have little impact of benthics, but most survive even in brachysaline water, that is salinity between 18 to 30 per thousand. Extreme variation in high and low salinity affect reproductive cycle of species. Variation occurs more in water depth up to 200 meter, slight variation between 100 to 1500 meters, but it becomes nearly constant below 1500 meters. Low salinity, that is brackish lagoons and marshes, favors low diversity assemblage of agglutinated fauna, having non-labyrinthic type and organic siliceous or ferruginous content. For example, rheofax and ammonia, we are going to see this in one diagram again. And high calcium carbonate concentration of hypersaline water favors porcelaneous species. So this is how the impact can be understood in planktic versus benthic species. This is triangular models for interpretation of salinities, paleosalinities based on the proportions of the three important suborders of order Foraminiferida, which are named as Textularina, Miliolina, and Rotellina. This model was proposed by Murray in 1970 for study of interpretation of salinities and paleosalinities. In this diagram, we find that different water bodies are shown. Here we have a water body limited within the continent, that is freshwater body, and here the one river is coming from the continent and emerging into the open sea. So this is here it is making most shelf area, and here there is one semi-lagoonal condition with the mixing of fresh water. This condition is called brackish lagoon and estuaries, and here there is one carbonate, there is a spit or carbonate platform, and this is normal marine and lagoon carbonate platform condition. And here we have a lagoon which is having only 10 to 20% opening, and this is hypersaline lagoon when salinity is high because of the evaporation, continuous evaporation of water in a limited area. In the triangular diagram on the right hand side, I am referring to this diagram. We have taken three orders: Miliolina representing porcelaneous wall, three-layered calcareous porcelaneous wall, and suborder Rotellina, which is calcareous hyaline perforated wall, and Textularina, that is representing agglutinated wall. And the samples are analyzed for the three proportions: miliolid, rotellid, and textularid, and their percentage is plotted. If all of them are having 33%, then the point will fall in the center of the triangle. If the proportion is shared by Miliolina and Rotellina, it will fall somewhere between this line Rotellina and Meliolina, and similarly if it is shared between Meliolina and Textulina, it will fall between the right line of the triangle, and if it is falling, it is shared between Rotellina and Textulina, it will fall on the baseline. And if we see the proportions of three suborders in different water bodies, in freshwater body we get only allogromids, so we do not have any point falling in the triangle, and the triangle will remain empty. If the sample is from most shelf areas, it will, all the points will fall in this shaded black area anywhere between this shaded area, and if it is belonging to brackish lagoon and estuarine condition, we will find that the points will fall in this shaded region, black shaded region, anywhere. And if it is from marine, normal marine lagoon and carbonate platform, it will be restricted to this particular region. All the points will be falling within this region. And from for samples from hypersaline lagoon, it will fall in the very thin strip within this strip. But the important thing we find is that if the samples are from hypersaline lagoon, then they the percentage may go up to 100% Meliolina or 100% Textulina, but never more than 10% 100% Meliolina or 100% Rotellina, but never more than 10% Textulina. And we will find that meliolids are dominated by Triloclina and the Rotellids are dominated by Discorbis. But if the sample is from a normal marine, lagoon and carbonate platform, we find that it is never more than 80% Rotellina and never more than 80% Meliolina, and not more than say 25 to 30% Textulina. But the meliolids are represented by Quincunculina and Rotellid are represented by Cibicides. In this particular case, where the samples are from brackish lagoon and estuaries, the sample will be shared either by 100% Rotellid or 100% Textulid, but never more than say 20% meliolid. And the Rotellids are dominated by ammonia, and the Textulid are dominated by Rheofax. And here in most self areas, the Rotellids are dominated by species like some species are Alphidium, and Textulid are represented by Textularia, and therefore we can say that salinity plays an important role in controlling the ecology, and it is reflected in the assemblage. We can summarize the impact of salinity as salinity is directly related to their vital activities. Each species has certain critical as well as optimum salinity limits for survival, growth, and reproduction. Salinity affects the geographical distribution. There is uniform distribution of salinity in open sea, so this effect is much more pronounced where there is considerable mixing with freshwater. Seasonal variation also affects distribution and occurrence of foraminifera. It affects test morphology, size, and ornamentation. Organic content and on substrate is another important parameter. Actually, foraminifera feed on small bacteria, algae, protists, and other organic matter, and adequate supply of nutrient is important. And there are taxa having symbiotic relation with algae and are benefited as compared to non-symbiotic ones. For example, larger foraminifera, living larger foraminifera, and the larger foraminifera of the tertiary time, they attained large size because of this symbiotic relation. A seasonal bloom and nutriting condition may result in bloom of foraminifera, particularly planktonic foraminifera and vice versa. And planktonic species are influenced by presence of seasonal bloom of population of phytoplanktons, as I said, in the photic zone, whereas benthic assemblages by presence and concentration of organic content of substrate. Higher organic content supports growth of populations. When we come to dissolved gases, we have three important gases: oxygen, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide. So far as oxygen is concerned, the average concentration for respiration and oxidation of organic matter varies from 4.0 to 6.5 ml per liter in dissolved state, and bloom in phytoplankton and rise in temperature during summers enhance oxygen in the photic zone. Poor oxygen condition affects population in two ways: either the size or shape of test is reduced or modified, or it may help in abundant development of bolivinity. So this is an indication of poor oxygen. Similarly, there are some benthic forms like rotorboides that is adapted to low oxygen shallow marine condition since middle Pliocene or lower Miocene time, can be considered as a good example or good indicator of low oxygen condition. Hydrogen sulfide H2S, it is produced by bacterial decay, so it is more in deep bottom sediments, and it makes the environment reducing and inhospitable, but it gets concentrated due to absence of oxygen at such depths. You see in this particular slide, I am trying to show you the pores in Rotorboides granulosum. This is a discorbate, low trochospiral form. It has a large number of pores, and it has been found that the number and size of pores is directly proportional to oxygen. And if this pore size becomes too much, then this species can develop a sieve. Here I am showing you in this particular diagram. This is a very enlarged view of a pore, and here you will find that there are certain there is a one sieve and which is having pores. So such type of structures are indicating a low oxygen condition, which are again good indicators for conversion of organic matter into oil. Carbon dioxide, the cycle of carbon dioxide is very important. It Carbon dioxide enters in the sea by dissolution from atmosphere, or exists in system through photosynthesis. Excessive carbon dioxide lowers the pH from normal range of water, that is 7.8 to 8.3. Excessive carbon dioxide lowers pH from a normal range, which is otherwise maintained between 7.5 to 8.3. Hydrogen ion concentration. In fact, secretion, recalcification of tests requires a lot of energy, and acidification under lower pH in marshes and bays may occur due to decay in organic matter. pH tolerance limits of species are different. For example, Trochamina, Anomalina, and few millilitres may live in pH as low as 7.2, but their small tests can tolerate low pH in a better way. At pH 7.8, dissolution of calcareous test will start. So if we have the effect of dissolution on the test, we can understand the pH condition, particularly in planktonic foraminifera, which have crossed the CCD after death. Calcium carbonate is another important constituent, because calcareous species are making their test, whether it is a benthic species or planktic species, of calcium carbonate. Its secretion depends upon temperature, salinity, and pressure, and therefore we can say that in lower temperature the calcium carbonate cannot precipitate easily, and under cooler condition naturally the agglutinated assemblages are dominating. Secretion increases with salinity, and calcium carbonate also plays a vital role in development of larger tests in tropical climate where calcium carbonate is more. In general, it influences ecology in two ways. One, it controls distribution depending upon its availability. It also influences size and robustness of calcium test. If there is more calcium carbonate, the test will be stronger and larger. So in this way, we can see that the environmental factors physical, chemical, and biological factors, they have a great impact on the ecology of foraminifera, and it helps us in study of paleoecology and also in the interpreting the environment of deposition of sediments. Thank you very much.